Blog Talk Radio.
Hello everyone, this is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is up to us. It is Monday, February 15th, 9:30 in the morning, Calgary, 9:30 in the evening, Calgary, Alberta time. It is Washington's birthday observed and President's Day down in the States, and it is Family Day up here in Alberta. And so I was off today, and it just had a kind of a relaxing day hanging out and did some research for tonight's show. And tonight we're going to cover the top. It's actually it's a workbook called Survivor to Thriver Workbook, and you can find it at www.ascasupport.org, and I'll give that information to you again. Yeah, it's a great workbook for adult survivors of child abuse, and that's kind of what we've been talking about. We've been talking about a lot about trauma the last week or two, a lot about stress issues and coping lists and how to cope, and if you were abused as a child, or if you've domestic violence issues, sexually abused, there's just all kinds of support out there, and we just need to keep reaching out, and that's why I'm doing this show. This is not a professional show, and I always say this on my shows, it's not a professional show, and I don't have any professional certificates or counseling certificates or professional therapy certificates. I'm just one person who is paying my own money out to do this show, and the reason being is that I know there's so many people out there suffering right now, and in abusive homes, in abusive situations, or they have, in the past. And so I know that there's a need. People need to be able to heal, first of all, and to be safe, find safety and heal and move on to have good lives. And so that's why I'm doing this show. It's not a professional show. I'm more like a friend who just wants to help out and pass on some resources that I find as I'm walking through my own healing process, and also, for my courses at MRU, which are, deal with the child rights and human rights and stuff. So I'm just so happy to stand with anyone who's raising their voice and saying no more silence. We have to start talking about this stuff. We have to get it out in the front and center in the public eye, and let people know that we're saying no, stop abuse. We got to stop child abuse. We got to stop all human rights abuses. But my heart is really with the children, and because I grew up in an abusive home, I know what it's like, to walk that daily walk, and I know what the aftermath is all about. So, my heart's with you all, and if you're out there suffering with this, just know that you're not alone, and that there's lots of help, and there's lots of good people out there who do want to help. And if you've run into some bad ones before, just keep looking for some good ones, because there is some good people out there with some big hearts who really want to help. So just keep looking. And, if you're under the age of 18 and, a young person, this show, is really, I'm all about child abuse awareness, education, awareness, and prevention of child abuse. And so, but the topics that are covered on this show deal with abuse, and they are pretty sensitive, and so you might have questions and things that might come into your mind and that you wouldn't have thought of before. And if you don't have someone to listen to this show with, I would ask that you would get someone to listen before you actually start listening to this show, because it'd be great if you could find a mentor or someone in your family, if you happen to have a parent or someone who actually cares what you're listening to, which I would hope that you do have someone in your life that cares enough about what you're listening to listen to this with you, because there's so many issues with the online stalkers, and online internet safety is such a huge issue, and we'll be covering some of that as well, as a matter of fact, sooner than later. And so you want to be sure that this is something that your caregivers or parents are okay with you listening to, and that they would be there with you while you listen to it, so they can help you and decide whether it's good for you to listen to, and also whether or not it's something that they can actually help you with if you have questions and stuff like that, because it's so important. We all want to be in a safe place. This show can trigger people. It can trigger people who are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder and different kinds of psychological issues. So that's why, if you think the show is going to bother you, please turn it off. It's not worth listening to. But if you're in a safe place and you feel comfortable with the topics of abuse, and you're okay with it, then I welcome you, and by all means I appreciate the support. And so we'll get right into the show. We're on for about 25 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And you can sit in the chat room if you want. A lot of times, I used to have stuff typed up in there, but I found that people weren't sitting in the chat room. They were just listening from the players. So now I don't really tend to do anything in the chat room, and I don't take too many phone calls either because I have some guy who likes to make a joke and phone in, and I just don't feel like it's necessary to listen to him because we have some way more important topics to cover, and so we only have a short period of time. So if you want to ask me a question, make sure you get a hold of me first and give me your phone number, and if you give me the first 3 digits of your phone number, let's say, I'll know it's you, and I can put you on the air. Because I love to hear from people, and I would love to hear from you if you have a question, or if you want to offer a support resource or something that really helped you heal and move past the whole trauma of adults, that adults suffer who were abused as children and or in a domestic violence situation or anything like that, right? So it's just great. I'm so happy that you're here. This is a Survivor to Thriver workbook that we're going to be looking at. It is 115 pages long. It's a huge workbook, and it's just very intensive, and the information is great. I would highly suggest you go on the website, check it out for yourself, and you'll know what we're going to be covering for the next in the evenings for the next week or two, because it's really going to take some time to get through it. Some of it we might not choose to read on the air. Some of it I will. It's www.ascasupport.org, and that is Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, a Morris Center program. And it's Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, ASCA, is an international self-help support group program designed specifically for adult survivors of neglect, physical, sexual, and or emotional abuse. It is community-based, provider-based, web-based Survivor to Thriver workbooks. There's all kinds of information on there, and there's like local chapters. If a city is actually hosting a chapter of the ASCA, then we could find that in the phone books. But we can find this on the web too. So www.ascasupport.org. I do highly recommend you go check out their website and look at this Survivor to Thriver workbook, and because then you'll know what we're going to be covering. And if it's just something that you don't necessarily want to get into, then you'll know that that's what we're going to cover for the next, in the evenings for the next probably 2 weeks, probably by the time we're done, because it's quite intensive. And the introduction is quite interesting. They said, that they really they think that this workbook is best used in a group support, but because then you have people to talk to, right? So it's just helpful to have people in your life, whether it's a survivors group or just a close friend who you trust and really trust with your information, and they know your situation. It's just a good idea to work through this book with someone, so that if you're having a hard time going through the book, you'll have someone there to support you, because it's just so important that we have people in our lives. I know what it's like to be feeling so down, and just so as we'll go through this, and I might throw in a little bit of my stuff, and because I know what it's like to experience the horror of child abuse, and it's very, very bad. And so the aftermath is really the problem. But they say, we survived most of it. We survived the abuse. So now we know that we can make it, and all we have to do is keep reaching out. That was off of Child Abuse Monument, Michael C. Irving's Child Abuse Monument. You can type right into your browser, Child Abuse Monument. That was in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And he has some great coping lists and stuff on there. But he says, you've made it through the worst of it, so now we can just move forward and really be proactive about searching out our own healings. And that's what it takes. That's what it's all about, is first of all realizing that we do count, we do matter, and that we do, we shouldn't have had to suffer what we did. But we can't go back and change the past. So now we have to change the way we see the future, the way we see ourselves, and the way we see, the direction in which we're going. And really, we want to keep going on a very positive, maybe a slow process, but nevertheless positive direction towards healing, right? Because there's too many survivors out there who have done it and are, they've made it, and so they're just I kind of look up to them, because I'm like, they did it, and so it's kind of given me a boost to say, what, I can do it. And I've pretty much walked out a lot of my healing, and I wish I would have got some professional help, but I didn't reach out. So, I went through a lot of dark times for many years, and until recently, actually, just now starting to feel pretty good. But I still have moments, and that's why I think it's important to get professional help and get some real people that really care in your life. It's so important to have those support people, and it means the world to me to have the people that I have in my life supporting me. And so It makes a huge difference. So in the introduction, they said, I'm going to read right from their page. They said, we have included this chapter at the beginning of this manual. It's called Safety First. We have included this chapter at the beginning of this manual because feeling safe in your recovery should always come first. Whether you are working on step 1 or step 21, you need a framework of physical and emotional safety in order to progress in your recovery. Because child abuse, at its core, is about being and feeling unsafe. People can change only from a position of safety. So if you don't feel safe, then you won't progress in your recovery. You want a strong foundation upon which to build your new self, and safety is the core of that foundation. So they really stress safety first. And this whole I don't know how many pages here is actually devoted to this being safe, and I think we should read it because it's so important, right? It's important for me, and it's important for anybody else who's ever dealt with child abuse or suffered any form of child abuse. Doesn't matter what kind, right? Safety is something that you want to incorporate seamlessly into your daily life, something you approach with the same dedication as you would a spiritual or moral practice. Safety is something that you must consider no matter where you are, at home, with friends and lovers, at work or play, and especially at ASCA meetings. Recovery entails facing horrible memories, painful feelings, powerful bodily sensations, and potentially self-destructive impulses and behaviors. To withstand these reactions, you need to feel safe and strong as much of the time as possible. And I agree with them on that. So important because in this if you believe you'll be triggered by even this show, make sure you turn it off and just go and find someone that you know and trust and and just get yourself safe in a safe place, right? It's so important. There are several steps involved in evaluating your current level of safety. Before you proceed with creating a plan for your recovery, the remainder of this section will focus on helping you assess your strengths and weaker points so that you can move through the ASC program from as strong a place as possible. So it kind of helps us to see what our strengths and weaknesses would be, right? And that way we know what we need to work on and what we're okay with, right? So it's just so important. It says assessing and facing risks. Now, let's see. Facing your abuse and your reactions to it brings with it risk. Risk that you will feel overwhelmed, out of control, unable to make the right decision in any number of situations. You can't grow without taking risks, but you won't recover if you take risks that you are not prepared for. So as a part of approaching recovery from a position of safety, safety and strength, you need to learn to distinguish between healthy and harmful risks. Think of safety as an inverted U curve, with the left end of the inverted U representing total safety, but no risk, and the right end of the U representing safety and total risk. No safety and total risk. So one side is safety and no risk, and the other side is no safety and total risk. So just the opposite, right? The optimum growth point is to the right of the middle of the curve, where high safety is combined with low risk. You always want to be conservative in balancing safety and risk because you want to avoid setbacks that may occur when the level of risk outweighs the level of safety you feel you need, considering that many survivors have histories of self-sabotage or of being re-victimized as adults. Safety first means learning to take fewer risks while you create more safety for yourself. So this just cannot be overstated. It is so important. And if you're in an unsafe situation right now and you're in an abusive home and you're having your life is being threatened and stuff, make sure you dial 911, get some help, phone your local police, get some help. You deserve to have a good life, and you don't want to lose your life. So if you're in a home and you're being abused, make sure you get some help. It's just, I can't say this enough. We see too many stories in the paper, too many stories on the news. It's always too late because it's always stories of these people's lives being taken from them and these children, right? And little kids, unfortunately, like if no one's looking out for them, they don't have a real way to get help, right? Unless somebody sees it and reports it. But as an adult, if you're in an abusive situation with your partner or husband or wife or whatever, make sure that you get help, because you do not want to lose your life. You deserve to have a good life, and it's just so important. We see too many people dying at the hands of abusive people, whether it's a female or male. Anyone can be an abuser, and so you do not want to mess around with that. I can't really talk about it enough. It's so important that you reach out, make the proper phone calls, call 911 if you have to, and do not allow yourself to be killed. There's help out there, and you do not want to lose your life. And, that's just all I can say, because you do matter, you do count, and I care, and so that's one person right there. And so you just want to make sure you get help for yourself, because, it's our human right to live, really, and it's the right to life, right? No one has the right to take your life. So you want to make sure that you understand that you have a right to life and that you have the right to a good life. I know all about human rights because that's what I study. And so, it's so important that we take hold of our rights and not allow people to abuse us or hurt us or take our lives. It's so important. And so if you feel like you're in a real bad situation, make sure you make the right phone calls. It's really the only thing to do. And if you suspect that a child is being abused, man, it's better to make the call. You could save a child's life. If it isn't abuse, well, that's good. At least someone cared enough to make the phone call. But if it is abuse, you could save a child's life, and that's all I can say. That's the main purpose. We want to be on the lookout for our neighbors and the people in our lives, right? So it says here, besides helping you to avoid setbacks, the idea of safety first is to maximize your chances of success when you do decide to take appropriate risks, so that you begin to build success and mastery into your life. By mastering challenges that contain some risks, you will begin to develop confidence in yourself, which in turn will enhance your self-esteem. In other words, you want to be stretched by your recovery, but never broken. So this is so important, right? We want to be able to build our confidence and build our level of trust and build our self-esteem and whatnot, right? And it's so important to do this, but we have to do it with as minimal risks as possible, because the risks are just too high of a price to be paid, which can cause us to go further into, whatever the issue is, depression or self-injury or whatever, right? And this we do not want. So we have to stay on the straight and steady. Probably that's why it's such a good idea to get a good counselor or a good therapist or someone in your life that knows exactly how to help you, right? Because I know that these issues are very real and they're very painful, and it's so hard sometimes to deal with it on your own. So make sure you reach out and get some support. That's all I can say. Do reach out and get some support. I know that once I started reaching out, people started reaching out to me. My hand was out reaching out for people, and then all of a sudden, all these people started reaching out to me, and I was actually really astounded. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, look at this. I wish I would have done this years ago. I mean, I sat around for years in my own sort of, pit of despair and what I call hell. And so, why I did that, I don't know. It was probably ingrained in me, from my youth of not to tell anybody and not to talk about it. And so I only really told close friends, like people in my life that knew me, like really knew me. They knew about it. But those relationships were broken off because I just didn't trust them, or they couldn't take any more of my pity party or whatever, right? So I didn't have any close relationships for so many years, and I used to sit around and I'd go to work, no problem. I'd be at work just fine, handling everything great. Nobody probably even knew at work what was going on, except for a few people that I told a little bit to. But the majority of the people in my life didn't even realize I was having any issues regarding adult survivor issues, and they wouldn't have known. And then I'd come home and sit on the couch, and I'd be thinking, I just want out. I want out of this mess, I want out of this pain, and it was so painful. And then I'd go to work and start the day again, and it was just this routine that I went through for quite a few years. And even people in my life didn't realize it. So if you don't reach out, a lot of times people don't see that in you. They see you as a functioning person. They might think, oh yeah, this person's just funny or has a different way about them, but they might not realize what you're actually going through, right? And so that's why when I started reaching out, all these people started reaching out to me. And I mean, I just thank them for it. I know most of them listen to my shows, and I thank you so much for your support and for your friendship, because you have no idea what it means to me. It means everything to me. And so that's why I just think, it's so important. That's why I'm doing this show, really, is just to tell people to just make sure you do reach out and not suffer in silence, because that's really the issue. It's not good to be sitting in silence suffering like that, because you never get anywhere with it, right? It's good to talk to people and find out from people who have experienced similar things to you, that can offer some guidance and maybe a little bit of, some resources, even just to say, look, this worked for me, try this, or this didn't work for me, or whatever. It just kind of it gives you the whole idea that, hey, I'm not alone in this, and that's sad, because really, wouldn't it just be great if only one of us had ever experienced child abuse? I mean, that'd be just wonderful, because then we would be able to say, well, at least it's just me. But we know that's just not the case, and there's so many people out there suffering, who are abused as children. I know a whole bunch of them myself from my childhood. So, it's so bad, and that's why it's so important, and that's why I'm doing this show. It's really just to be one more voice out there, just saying, look, it needs to be talked about. It needs to be front and center. For the kids now who are being abused, we need to look at ways within the community that we can really do some good work for children who are out there right now, because this is the thing. There's just going to be a whole another generation of survivors. I mean, it's not funny. And the thing is, if you've experienced child abuse, the psychological damage and the emotional damage that it causes. The physical stuff is gone for me, but the psychological damage and the emotional damage just hangs around. And even though now I'm quite a lot better than I used to be, but I could have lost my life. I mean, I could have just given up, right? And so this is what happens to people. I know, and it's very sad. It's very, very sad. One of my brothers committed suicide when he was 33, and he just did not see any other way. And he had tried many times and finally made it. And he never really reached out to anybody and got any help. And sometimes I think, in his life, some people had reached out to him, but he could not find it within himself to overcome that pain. And so it's so sad to know that someone in your own family couldn't deal with the pain and killed themselves. I mean, it's horrible. So it could have been me. So that's why I'm saying it's so important that we all know that we do count, we do matter, and we are important. We have every right to a good life that everybody else has, but we have to be proactive about getting that. We have to, first of all, take a look at what we want and what we need for our lives that's healthy. Get rid of these unhealthy relationships, get out of the abuse, make sure that you do not allow yourself to be abused again, and get into some good support groups, find some really good friends who really care. And, we can begin to build our lives the way that they should have been in the first place, right? And we can do it, but man, it's a hard road. And nothing easy about it. And that's why I'm just here to say, I'm a friend, and if you need to talk, you can get a hold of me on blogtalkradio.com, Facebook, wherever you can find my email addresses around, and just let me know, because I know what it's like. I do, and it's hard to find people that actually care. But I've met a whole bunch of them, and I think I have 300-400 people now that care, and that makes me so happy, because it's the first time in my life that I've had that many people actually care, right? And because before that, there just wasn't that many people that actually ever cared. And so it's a new feeling for me, and it's an awesome feeling, because it's very empowering, because they give you that support, and it empowers you to keep going. It empowers you to keep moving forward and to build the relationships with them, because this is the whole thing. They obviously care, so how awesome is that? You know what I mean? It makes me happy. So that's all I can say. Just keep reaching out. We got about 6 minutes left. We'll keep going. It says timing is everything. Recovery occurs in small, steady steps taken one after another. Each step you take needs to be reviewed, evaluated, and experienced so that you can derive maximum benefit from your hard work. It says, try not to get ahead of yourself. Many survivors feel impatient with the pace of their recovery, especially if they have spent years feeling stuck. You may want to jump ahead and go for the big success out of a sense of wanting to finally put the past to rest. But remember, when you jump ahead before you are really ready, you sacrifice safety and risk a setback that can leave you feeling dispirited and hopeless. So try to reassure yourself that your abuse occurred over a long period of time, so important formative years, and so full recovery is also likely to take time, right? Because whatever took the time to cause us to feel that way, right, the years of abuse that we might have experienced, or even if it doesn't even matter like how many years, but just the abuse that we suffered, it took a long time to cause that damage. So it's going to take a long time to recover from it. So we don't want to be rushing it. That's what they're trying to say, I guess, is not rush the process of healing, right? We want to just take it slow and steady and, get that support. Not on our own. I'm telling you, I totally agree with counseling and therapy and psychologists and the whole 9 yards, because I know that we all deserve to have a good life, and in order if that's what it takes is to find a good counselor, well that's great, because then they can help us, right? I wish I would have had this years ago. I wish I would have reached out. I really do. It says it is very important that you set the structure and pace of your recovery. Many survivors, anxious to proceed with and finish their recovery, often find themselves exploring recovery techniques that threaten them or make them feel victimized and violated. Often these survivors had some sense that they were not yet ready to explore their abuse issues at that particular level, but failed to trust their intuition, cautioning them to move slowly. Although it is difficult to resist a path that promises to lead to healing and recovery, we strongly encourage you to trust your own inner sense about your readiness. If you are not sure yourself whether you are ready to explore your abuse issues using particular techniques or at a different pace, see if you can get some help from a trusted friend or therapist. Ultimately, though, you must be the judge of whether you are ready for a certain recovery experience, right? I agree with that completely. There was a time in my life that, I would have not been ready to look at what happened to me. Even though I was feeling the anger, it was going to be over the top. It was going to be overload if I actually allowed myself to deal with it. And so I know what that's like to be there. And because the pain was just too hard, it was too painful. And, as I started to grow over the last few years and realize that, it was never going to change, and that I really wanted to have, to get involved in child rights and human rights. And I thought, okay, well, how am I going to do that if I'm just sitting around saying, not willing to tell my story? Well, as soon as I went public with my story, it was a huge release, because I thought, finally my story's told, and I'm not going to take this to the grave with me. I really think it needs to be told, and people just need to know that this is going on, and it does happen in people's families more than we know. So, because a lot of abuse is not reported, we know that it's underreported. So it's just all it's all over the place, and we know this. And so this is the thing. It was quite therapeutic for me to do that. But years ago, I would have never been able to do that. It would have been something that I would not have felt comfortable doing, writing out my story and actually allowing it to be on the public eye, and to be in public view. And now I'm totally okay with it, because if it means helping one child not have to go through what I went through and what my family went through, then it's worth it. I don't care, it's worth it. So this is the thing. It's so important. And but we're all in different stages and different steps of our healing, and that's why I always tell people the topic that we're talking about on the show, and it allows people to turn off the show if they don't want to listen to it. And I always let people know that, if it's going to trigger them or cause them to be uncomfortable, to please turn off the show, because it's so important. You will know yourself where you're at in your healing process, right? Because you know yourself. So other people won't be able to tell, but you do know. So it's very important to listen to your inner instinct, your inner gut feelings on things, and know what's going to be good for you and what's not, right? So as we're going through this book here, this next week or two, if it's a subject that we're talking about, and I'll let you know ahead of time what it is, be sure and just turn it off. Don't even listen to it. It's just not worth it, right? Or you can listen to it at another time, right? Because you can always listen to these on archive if you really wanted to. But it's no big deal. I don't mind, because I'd rather have you safe and well. And I am. I'm telling you, that's about it. I'm just going to read some resources, and we'll get on with this on Wednesday night. So yeah, I'm so happy. I am the Canada Regional Director for Dream Catchers for Abused Children, and I'm so happy to stand with them. I volunteer with them, and I just love what they are doing, and I love the work that they're doing to raise awareness, prevention of child abuse, and they are so proactive in the fight against child abuse. It's so good to see what's happening there. check them out at http www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com. They have a great website with lots and lots of resources and reference material, and you can just go on there and you can download their free PDF, the free child abuse handbook. It's a free PDF download. I did. It's a great handbook, and there's just so much good information there and so much healing on that on their website. I just love it. And there's the silverbraid.org. That is the Silverbraid Survivors of Sexual Exploitation Network. It's the voice of it's actually the voice of Voices for Justice Network. It's Ann Bissell, and they have a toll-free hotline, 1-888-702-7273. Well, I'll be back on tomorrow morning, 5:30 in the morning, one child abuse survivor to another. I hope you can join me. And take care of yourselves, everybody. My heart is with you. And make sure you get yourself safe. Have a good night.